The air in the alien nightclub was thick with smoke, glowing lights, and the sound of slow alien jazz. Jake Carter sat alone at the corner table, sipping something blue and bitter. He wasn't here to drink. He was here because someone very dangerous had called for him. A message had arrived 2 days ago. No sender, just one sentence. Come to Voznin and ask for the boss. Jake was a private investigator, ex-soldier, and part-time gambler. He had taken strange jobs before, but this one felt different. His gut told him something big was coming, and his gut was rarely wrong. The club's back door opened, and a tall alien guard with metal arms stepped in. Jake Carter. The guard asked with a growl. Jake nodded once, and the guard motioned for him to follow. They walked through a narrow hallway, past doors that pulsed like veins. Then they entered a room that smelled of spice and power. At the center sat an alien, known only as the boss. He looked part reptile, part machine, with golden eyes that never blinked. "You're human," the boss said, his voice deep like thunder. Jake gave a short smile. "That's what my mother told me." The boss didn't laugh, but something in his face moved, like a smirk trying to escape. "I need someone to find my wife," he said. "She's missing." Jake raised an eyebrow. "And why not use your own men?" The boss leaned forward, his eyes glowing slightly. "Because I can't trust them," he said. "And because you, human, are hard to track." Jake stayed quiet for a moment, thinking, "Is she running from you?" He asked carefully. The boss's face darkened. "She's confused. That's all. Bring her back, unharmed. And you'll be paid in diamonds." Jake didn't like it, but the money was good to good. He nodded. "Where was she last seen?" The boss slid a data chip across the table. "Luxury planet Varelia, 3 days ago," he said. "Find her. But remember, she's mine." He paused, then added, "Don't fall for her beauty, human. It's a trap even monsters dream about." Jake took the chip and stood up, but his mind was already spinning. A missing alien wife, a jealous husband, a rich offer, and a warning that sounded more like a threat. He should have walked away, but he didn't. Instead, the next day, he boarded a small ship and flew toward Varelia. The planet was beautiful, covered in golden beaches, floating gardens, and purple skies. But Jake knew beauty could lie. He followed the data chip to a high-end resort near the coast. He asked questions, showed Lyra's photo, and got nervous glances in return. "Someone like her stays in memory," said a bartender. "But you don't want to find her." Jake didn't listen. He kept digging until he found her last room abandoned. Now, inside, he found a torn dress on the bed, and a strange message written on the mirror. The letters weren't in any language he knew, but they felt like a cry for help. He reached to touch the mirror, and that's when he heard it, a whisper. Soft and close. "Are you here to take me back?" Jake froze. He turned around slowly, and there she was. Standing in the corner of the room was the woman in the photo, but she looked different. Tired eyes, wild hair, and a sadness that wrapped around her like a second skin. She was beautiful. Yes, but not in the way the boss had described. She looked like someone who had seen too much, felt too much, and had nowhere left to run. Jake raised his hand slowly. "Lyra," he said gently. She nodded once, but didn't step closer. "I didn't expect you to find me so soon," she said softly. Jake didn't answer. He was busy reading the look in her eyes. Fear, maybe, but also relief and something else he couldn't name. "I was hired to bring you back," he said honestly. "I know," she replied, "but will you?" That question hung in the air like smoke. Jake didn't know the answer, not yet, but deep inside, he felt something shift. This wasn't just a job anymore, and he had a feeling it never was. Jake didn't move, and neither did she. The air between them felt heavy, like time itself had paused to listen. Lyra's eyes didn't blink, but they searched his face slowly. like she was trying to guess his thoughts before he could speak them. She stepped back slightly, not in fear, but, like someone used to running, Jake lowered his hand. Showing her he wasn't a threat, he noticed a cut on her arm, wrapped in fabric that looked like it had been torn from the very dress he found earlier. "You're hurt," Jake said quietly. "I've been worse," Lyra replied, her voice almost too soft to catch. She moved past him and looked at the message she had left on the mirror. He asked what it meant, but she shook her head. "It's not for you." Jake knew he should have contacted the boss right away, reported her location, followed the plan. But something about her made that feel wrong. Lyra walked to the window, staring at the floating gardens outside. "Do you know what he does to the people who displease him?" she asked, not turning around. Jake didn't answer. He didn't have to. He had seen the boss's cruelty with his own eyes. Lyra finally turned to him, her lips trembling slightly. "I didn't escape because I wanted freedom," she whispered. "I escaped because I wanted to live." Her words were simple, but they struck like lightning in Jake's chest. He wasn't sure if he believed her, but deep down, he didn't want to doubt her. Lyra suddenly grabbed a small device hidden under the bed. Jake reached for his weapon, but she didn't attack. Instead, she threw the device to the floor and smashed it under her foot. "It was tracking me," she said. "Now we have less than 6 hours before they find us." Jake knew then he had crossed the line. If he helped her now, there would be no going back, no diamonds, no safe return, only danger and betrayal. But still, he nodded. "Let's move." They left the resort through the back, walking under purple trees and silent lights. Lyra knew the area better than he did, taking narrow alleys and tunnels to avoid the eyes in the sky. By nightfall, they reached a forest dome on the planet's edge, full of glowing plants and strange bird sounds. Lyra collapsed under a large leaf and pulled her knees close. Jake built a small fire, just enough to keep them warm, but not enough to be spotted. He handed her water, and she drank it slowly, like she didn't trust the kindness. After a long silence, she looked at him and asked, "What's your name?" "Jake," he replied. "Jake Carter sounds strong," she said. Giving a small smile for the first time, Jake didn't know how to respond, so he looked away. Lyra stared into the fire, her voice soft again. "I was married to him." Before I even understood what marriage was, Jake's fingers tightened around his jacket. "He didn't want a wife," Lyra continued. "He wanted a trophy. Something to show off to the other crime lords." She paused, then added, "He bought me, Jake, and I belonged to him until I ran." Jake's chest ached, and he hated that he couldn't fix her pain. "You don't belong to anyone now," he said, surprising even himself. Lyra looked at him, eyes glassy under the firelight. "I'm not sure that's true," she whispered, before Jake could speak. A sudden sound cut through the forest, a hum, low and rising. Then a beam of light scanned the trees. "They're here," Lyra said sharply. Standing up, Jake grabbed her hand and they ran through the glowing underbrush. Behind them, voices shouted in an alien tongue. Heavy footsteps crashing through the leaves. Lyra pulled out a small sphere and threw it behind them. A bright flash exploded, blinding the hunters and covering their escape. They kept running until their lungs burned and their legs gave out. Finally, they reached a small cave, hidden behind glowing vines. They slid inside and waited, hearts pounding, breath silent. Jake leaned his head against the cool stone wall. Lyra's hand rested on his, warm and shaking. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "You didn't ask for this." Jake turned to her, their faces inches apart. "No," he said quietly, "but I'm here now, in that cave." With the world hunting them and the firelight gone, something changed, not with words, not with promises, but with a silent understanding between two broken souls. And far above them, in a dark tower lit with red light, The boss watched the last signal blink out. He leaned forward slowly and smiled. "Bring them to me alive," he ordered, "but if the human touches her again, cut off his hands." Jake sat near the cave entrance, his blaster in hand, his back sore against the stone. The night on Varelia was quiet now, too quiet, as if the forest itself knew they were being hunted. Lyra slept behind him, curled into herself like a child. Trying to disappear, her breathing was soft, almost silent. But Jake didn't sleep. He couldn't. Not when danger could come at any moment. And not when his mind was spinning faster than any ship he'd flown. What was he even doing? He was supposed to bring her back, hand her over, get paid, and leave instead. Here he was, hiding in the dirt with her, risking his life for a woman he barely knew. But maybe it wasn't just about her anymore. Maybe it was about what she represented: freedom. Truth, something real in a galaxy full of lies, as morning broke. Soft blue light poured through the vines above them. Lyra stirred and sat up, rubbing her eyes. Jake handed her the last energy bar in his pack, and she smiled faintly before taking. I had a dream," she said, while chewing slowly. "I was flying, but I didn't know where." "Sometimes that's better," Jake replied. "Not knowing means you can go anywhere." She looked at him for a long time, her expression unreadable. Then she said, "You know, don't you, that they'll never stop?" Jake nodded. "They won't," he said, "but neither will I." Lyra blinked at him, confused. "Why?" Jake didn't answer, not directly. Instead, he checked his weapon and said, "We're moving. Now." They traveled through the lower jungles, where the roots of trees wrapped around broken statues of a forgotten time. Lyra walked beside him. In silence, but her steps felt lighter, like something inside her had shifted. Jake kept his eyes on the sky, watching for any sign of pursuit. But when they reached a rusted tunnel leading to an old mining base, he stopped suddenly. A sensor blinked red on his wrist. "We're not alone," he said, pulling her back gently. Within seconds, a metal blast echoed ahead. 3 bounty hunters in armor stepped out of the shadows. Weapons raised, Jake aimed his blaster, shielding Lyra behind him. "Back off," he warned. "She's under my protection." One of them laughed, his helmet reflecting the sunlight. "You think she wants your protection, human?" he sneered. "She's property of the boss. And you're just the messenger who got too close." The others raised their guns, and Jake knew it was now or never. He fired first, ducked low, and dragged Lyra into cover as shots exploded all around them. They fought hard, and Jake took a burn to his shoulder, but didn't stop. Lyra grabbed a small crystal from her belt and activated a tenergy burst forward, knocking 2 of them down. The last one tried to escape. But Jake chased him down and slammed him against a wall. "Tell the boss," Jake growled. "I'm not bringing her back." The bounty hunter spat blood and smiled. Too late, he already knows. Then he bit something in his mouth and fell limp. Dead, Jake cursed under his breath and turned to Lyra, who looked pale but calm. "I guess we're really in this now," she said, voice low. He nodded, breathing hard. No turning back. Later, they found shelter in the ruins of a crashed transport ship. Jake treated his wound while Lyra lit a tiny fire using scrap wires. For the first time, they sat close, without fear, without running. Their hands touched by accident, but neither of them moved away. "You don't even know me," she whispered. "I don't need to," Jake replied. "I know you're worth saving." Her eyes shimmered in the firelight. "I thought no one would ever say that to me again," she said. Silence wrapped around them like a blanket, but it wasn't heavy. It was warm, soft, fragile. Then, suddenly, Jake's communicator buzzed. He had forgotten it was still linked to the boss's frequency. The voice came through the speaker, cold and slow. "Jake," the boss said, "I know what you've done." Jake ripped the communicator off and crushed it underfoot. But the damage was done. The boss was coming, and next time, he wouldn't send bounty hunters. He'd come himself, and Lyra, staring into the dying fire, whispered the words that sent a chill down Jake's spine. "If he finds us, he won't take me alive." The wind howled through the skeleton of the crashed ship like it was mourning something. Jake stood outside in the dust, staring up at the dark sky. He hadn't slept, not since the boss's voice came through the broken communicator. That voice had stayed in his head all night, whispering threats. He knew it was only a matter of time now. Inside the ship, Lyra sat on a piece of old cargo, watching him. She hadn't said much since last night. Maybe she didn't need to. Jake could feel the weight between them, the closeness, the danger. The quiet choice they were both pretending they hadn't made. He didn't regret saving her, not for a second. But he regretted how late he was to realize what it meant when he finally came back inside. Lyra didn't look up. She just asked, "Would you still protect me if you knew everything?" Jake paused, then sat down across from her. "I already know enough," he said. "And I'm still here." Lyra smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You think I'm a victim," she said quietly. "But I've done things too. Terrible things." Jake leaned closer. "So have I," he replied, "but I won't let them own us forever." She looked at him then, and this time her eyes held something new trust. Maybe, or something even more dangerous. Jake didn't stop himself when he reached out to touch her hand. And she didn't pull away. There, in the silence, something between them bloomed. It wasn't planned, it wasn't right, and it certainly wasn't safe, but it was real. They didn't speak again until the sun began to rise. Then Lyra stood and said, "We need to leave." Jake nodded, already gathering their things, but before they could step out, they heard a low mechanical hum rising from the hills beyond the wreckage. Jake ran to the edge of the ship and looked out. 3 black ships were descending fast, silent, and smooth. "They found us," Jake said. Lyra didn't panic. Instead, she pulled something from her pack, a small glowing device with ancient symbols on its surface. "I didn't want to use this," she said, "but we don't have a choice." Jake recognized the tech instantly. "You're carrying forbidden gear," he said in shock. Lyra just looked at him. "It's not for fighting," she said. "It's for escaping." She activated the device and a ring of light formed around them. The world shimmered and bent, and suddenly they weren't in the ship anymore. They stood in a cold white hallway, lit by strange blue fire. Jake blinked, adjusting to the brightness. "Where are we?" he asked. Lyra didn't answer immediately. Then she said, "A place only I know about." They walked quickly down the hallway as distant alarms echoed far away. Lyra stopped in front of a door and pressed her palm to the panel. It opened with a hiss, revealing a quiet room with soft chairs, food, and clean water. Jake looked around, confused. "What is this place?" Lyra turned to him slowly. "A safe house," she said, "built by the rebels." Jake froze. "You're one of them," he said. She nodded. "I was. And now?" She looked away. "Now I'm just trying to survive." They sat down, finally breathing again. Jake cleaned the burn on his shoulder, while Lyra ate something that looked like fruit but shimmered like metal. After a while, she whispered, "You need to know something?" Jake looked up. "I'm pregnant," she said. The words fell like thunder in the quiet room. Jake's breath caught. "Is it his?" he asked. Lyra didn't speak at first. Then she whispered, "Yes." Jake turned his head. Staring at the floor, the weight of everything hit him at once. He was protecting the wife of a crime lord, hiding her, caring for her, and now this. A child, and not his. He stood slowly, pacing the room. He didn't yell, didn't curse, but his silence said more than words ever could. Lyra stood too, watching him, "I never asked you to save me," she said, voice trembling. Jake stopped, turned, and looked into her eyes. "No," he said, "but I still did." And then, without warning, the room shook. The walls flickered, lights dimmed, and a cold wind swept through the chamber. Lyra's face went pale. "They found the safe house," she whispered. Jake grabbed his gear, pulled her close. "Then we run again," he said, "but not alone." Not anymore. Outside the sealed door, black armored boots marched quietly forward. And somewhere behind those walls, the boss himself finally stepped onto the planet. His voice rang through the communicator in his hand. "Don't kill them yet," he said. "I want to see their faces first." The wind in the underground tunnel wasn't real, but it felt cold enough to bite. Jake's hand tightened around Lyra's as they ran. Shadows stretching on the walls beside them. Sirens echoed behind them, long and sharp, like a scream being stretched across steel. The rebels' safe house had fallen faster than either of them expected. Someone had betrayed them, but Jake didn't know who. And he didn't have time to ask. Lyra's steps were uneven, slower than before, and Jake could feel her strength fading. She hadn't eaten much since the night before. And the news of her pregnancy had changed everything. Not just for her, but for him too. He had promised to protect her, and now? It wasn't just her life in danger, was the life growing inside her. Still, Jake didn't regret staying by her side, not even for a second. They burst into a hidden chamber at the tunnel's end. The walls lined with old star maps and broken weapons. Jake sealed the door behind them, locking it tight with a manual code. Lyra collapsed onto a nearby bench, breathing hard. Jake crouched beside her, checking her pulse. "You're burning up," he said. "Worried?" "I'm fine," she whispered. But her voice cracked like dry paper. Jake pulled out a stim pack from his jacket and pressed it to her arm. She winced, then sighed as the energy surged through her veins in the dim light. Jake noticed something, a strange blinking light on one of the old control panels. He walked over and brushed away the dust, revealing a small holoscreen. A message was playing on loop, just 3 words. Over and over again, "Jake Carter. Betrayer." He stared at the screen, jaw tight. "How do they know my name?" he muttered. Lyra stood up slowly, leaning against the wall for support. "The boss must have put a price on your head," she said. "You're not just protecting me anymore. You're one of his enemies now." Jake didn't care about the bounty, but he knew what it meant. They couldn't hide anymore. The whole system would be looking for them now. Not just bounty hunters, but mercs. Rebels and smugglers, too. He looked at Lyra. And even with her face pale and her hands shaking, she nodded like she understood. "We need to disappear," she said. For good. Jake helped her stand, and together they moved deeper into the tunnels. The map showed a secret exit that led beyond the city into the Badlands where no one dared to follow. It was a long shot, but it was their only one. As they walked, Lyra began to talk again. Her voice was soft, tired, but filled with things she had never said before. She told Jake about the day she was taken from her homeworld, sold in silence like she was nothing. About the years she spent smiling in public, but crying in private. About how the boss had once promised her safety, then delivered pain. Jake listened to every word, carving a mark into his heart. "I thought love was a trick," she whispered. "But then you came along." Jake didn't know what to say, so he said nothing, but he reached out. And she leaned into his side as they walked. They finally reached the exit, a broken hatch leading into the open desert. The heat slammed into them the moment they stepped out. Above, the sky was filled with smoke from the rebel city burning far. Behind them, Jake stared at the flames, then turned his back to them for good. But they didn't get far. A low whine pierced the air, and then a shadow passed over them. Jake looked up and saw it, a sleek black shuttle descending fast. Lyra grabbed his arm, her voice trembling. That's his ship. Jake raised his weapon, but he knew it was useless. The boss had come in person, just like he'd promised. The shuttle landed with a loud hiss. Kicking up clouds of hot dust, the ramp lowered, and heavy boots thudded down onto the cracked stone. Then he appeared, tall, cold, eyes glowing like fire behind a silver mask. The boss, her husband, the one who had started all of this. He didn't speak at first, just looked at Jake with quiet fury. Then his voice rang out, sharp and calm. I gave you one job, human. Jake stepped in front of Lyra, gun aimed straight, even though his hands shook. You gave me a lie, he said, and I chose the truth. The boss tilted his head slightly. You chose death, he said. Then snapped his fingers, and from the ship behind him, 4 armored soldiers stepped out. Weapons raised. Lyra grabbed Jake's arm, whispering, we can't win this, but Jake didn't move. He stared at the boss and said something Lyra had never heard from him before. Then let me die for something I believe in. And in that second, Lyra realized Jake wasn't just protecting her anymore, he was in love with her, and now he was ready to give everything to prove it. The first shot missed his head by inches. Jake didn't flinch. He fired back without thinking, knowing full well it wouldn't be enough. The soldiers advanced like machines, silent and perfect, armored from head to toe. Lyra dragged him backward, eyes wide with fear. We have to run, she cried. But there was nowhere left to run. They were surrounded, sky above them blackened by ships. Ground behind them scorched and closed. The boss stepped closer, slow and sure, every move like a king walking to his throne. He didn't even raise a weapon. He just looked at Jake like a hunter watching an animal in a cage. I warned you, he said coldly. You touched what was mine. Jake stood in front of Lyra, blood on his lip and dust in his hair. She was never yours, Jake said, voice low. She's not a thing you can keep in a box. The boss gave a soft chuckle, dry and sharp like broken glass. You think this is love? He said. She's using you. Jake didn't look away. Maybe, he said, but I'd rather die helping her escape than live serving you. The boss raised one hand, and the soldiers moved forward in perfect rhythm. Lyra stepped beside. Jakin took his hand. Her fingers were shaking, but her eyes were fierce. Then, without warning, she reached into her coat and pulled out a small device. It pulsed with red light. Its surface cracked like it had been used before. Jake looked at it and immediately understood. Don't, he whispered. It'll kill you. Lyra nodded slowly, but it might save you, she said. Jake grabbed her wrist and pushed the device away. No, he said. We do this together. Or not at all. The soldiers raised their weapons. The boss gave the order, end him. And then something happened. Something no one expected. A loud, sharp sound tore through the air, a blast from the sky. A rebel ship descended at full speed, guns blazing, tearing into the enemy line with fire and smoke. The soldiers scattered. As explosions rocked the ground, Jake pulled Lyra down and covered her as debris flew overhead. The boss vanished behind a wall of smoke, screaming something in a language Jake couldn't understand. Rebel fighters stormed the battlefield, wearing mismatched armor and yelling with wild joy. One of them grabbed Jake by the arm and shouted, We saw your signal, you crazy idiot. Get on the ship. Jake lifted Lyra into his arms, her body weak but alive. They ran, covered by rebel fire, as more enemy troops landed in the distance. Inside the rebel ship, the door slammed shut and they lifted off fast. Jake collapsed into a seat, holding Lyra close, his heart pounding so hard he couldn't hear anything else. She was breathing, eyes open, but barely. I'm here, he said. Again and again, I'm right here. Lyra tried to smile. You really stayed, she whispered. Jake touched her cheek gently. I'm not leaving, he said. Not now. Not ever. The medics rushed in and pulled her away, strapping her to a cot. Jake stood outside the bay door, watching through the glass, fists clenched. His mind burned with images: the boss's face, the cold eyes, the hatred. This wasn't over. Not yet. Later. In the quiet of the rebel ship, a leader approached Jake, a tall alien woman with scars down her neck. "You risked everything," she said, "for her." Jake nodded. "She's not just someone I rescued," he said. "She's someone I'd die for." The woman nodded back, slow and respectful. "Then we'll help you," she said. "But the boss won't stop. He's already placed a bounty so high. People will come from every system." Jake didn't even blink. "Let them," he said. "I'll bury every last one in the back of the ship." Lyra slept quietly, her hand resting over her stomach, and somewhere in space, the boss sat in silence. Watching the battle replay on his private screen, he said nothing, didn't move, just stared. Then, after a long pause, he whispered, "Fine," and he pressed a button, opening a hidden chamber behind his throne. Inside was not more soldiers, not weapons, but something much worse. A figure stood inside, tall and silent, wrapped in chains and shadows. "I want her alive," the boss said slowly, "and I want the human to scream before he dies." The statue didn't look like her. Not really. The face was too smooth, the eyes too proud, the stance too perfect. But the name at the base said it all: Solara of Soren, breaker of chains. Jace stood at the edge of the plaza, cloak pulled low. Watching the crowd move past the monument, children pointed at it, smiling. Vendors sold miniature versions carved from crystal and stone. The world had turned her into a legend, but Jace knew the truth: legends didn't bleed. And she had bled more than most. It had been 3 years since the fall of Vorkuth. 3 years since Solara vanished into the stars. She had left without warning, no goodbye, no message. Only a memory and a heartbeat. Jace had waited, searched, called in every favor he had left, but she was gone. Some said she had died giving birth. Others said she lived on a quiet moon, raising her child in peace. None of the rumors mattered to him. Only the silence did. Every day since, he'd told himself the same thing: she was alive, and she would come back. Today was different. Something felt heavier in the air, as if the wind carried more than dust and memory. As he turned to leave the plaza, a voice stopped him cold. "You still wear that ugly coat." His heart stopped. He turned slowly, afraid it was just a dream. But there she was, Solara, standing beneath the statue meant to honor her. Older, yes, her hair longer, her eyes sharper, but still her. She wore no armor, no weapons, only a long cloak and a quiet smile. And beside her, holding her hand, was a small boy. The child looked up at Jace with curious eyes. His eyes. Jace took one shaky step forward. "You're real?" he whispered. Solara nodded once, her voice thick. "I couldn't stay away forever." He knelt down, looking at the boy, who stared at him with wonder. Solara placed her hand on the child's shoulder. "His name is Kale," she said softly. "He knows about you." Jace reached out slowly, and Kale didn't back away. Instead, he smiled, a small, nervous smile that shattered Jace's heart completely. "I missed so much," Jace said, his voice cracking. Solara stepped closer. "But you have the rest of his life to catch up." They didn't kiss, not yet. They didn't need to. What they had now was stronger than fire or passion. It was family. Something stolen, now returned. As they walked together through the crowd, no one noticed them. Just a tired man, a strong woman, and a curious boy. But the stars above noticed, and maybe, just maybe, they burned a little brighter. Because legends don't always wear crowns or carry swords. Sometimes they wear old coats, carry scars, and hold a child's hand. And sometimes, the greatest victory isn't survival, it's finding your way back to the people you love.